Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we synthesize stacks of complex sources, articles, research papers, confidential notes, to give you the essential understanding of the world's most consequential movements.
Today, we are undertaking a monumental task, a deep dive into the complete transformation happening in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You know, the project formerly known as Vision 2030.
And this is an effort that, it touches everything: economics, society, governance, and of course, geopolitics. It's all being orchestrated, really, by one figure, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS.
Right. And our mission here is to try and move past the, let's say, the usual skepticism you see in a lot of Western media.
Exactly. We want to really unpack the strategic blueprint, the sheer momentum of it all, and what it really means geopolitically. If you want the shortcut to understanding how one of the world's most critical nations is trying to completely redefine its future, this is it.
And you said momentum. We have to start with the scale, with the numbers, because honestly, they're astonishing.
Okay, lay them on us.
When Vision 2030 kicked off back in 2016, it wasn't just a vague idea. It was 1,064 distinct interlocking initiatives.
1,064. That's not a plan. That's a complete rewiring of a country.
It is, but here's the kicker. This isn't just a binder on a shelf. Our sources confirm that 87% of those initiatives are already done or actively in progress.
Wow. So nearly 925 major national projects all moving at the same time. That suggests, the bureaucracy that usually kills these grand plans has somehow been bypassed.
Or streamlined, exactly. And they're measuring all of this. They use key performance indicators, KPIs, that were set right at the beginning.
Right, the KPIs. How are they doing on those?
A remarkable 81% of those KPIs have already hit their original targets. But it gets even crazier. 257 of those indicators have actually surpassed the goals that were set for 2024 and 2025.
Hold on. So on almost a quarter of their most important metrics, they're not just on track, they're years ahead of schedule.
Years ahead, which tells you this isn't just rhetoric. It's execution at a speed that almost defies belief.
And that speed, it forces you to look at the architect differently. An MBS is often seen through this very narrow political lens.
The transactional lens, yeah.
But what our analysis shows is someone who's fundamentally a builder, a master planner. He is systematically guiding the country to a future that isn't dependent on oil and plays a new role on the world stage, on its own terms.
Absolutely. To get the future of Saudi Arabia, you have to get this strategic reorientation he's driving. It's all about leveraging their own intrinsic strengths, the non-oil ones, to build something that lasts.
So to grasp that, we need to look at the foundations, the pillars of the whole project.
Exactly. Why and how this is all happening.
Okay, let's start with the context, because the timing of Vision 2030's launch in 2016, it's really important for understanding why so many people were skeptical at first.
Oh, it was a moment of acute existential threat for any country that depends on oil. In 2016, oil prices had just plummeted. We're talking under $30 a barrel. For a country that basically runs its entire government and pays its citizens with oil revenue, that's a catastrophe. It shows you just how fragile a single commodity economy is.
And when your economy is that fragile, we're talking about building brand new cities from scratch or creating the world's biggest investment fund, it must have sounded either delusional or just incredibly audacious.
It was definitely seen as audacious, but MBS was already consolidating the power he needed to actually pull it off. His rise was just meteoric.
Let's run through it. Minister of Defense in 2015.
Then Crown Prince in 2017, Prime Minister in 2022. This rapid accumulation of authority, and we should be clear, it involved some necessary internal crackdowns, like the 2017 anti-corruption sweep at the Ritz-Carlton. It was essential.
So he wasn't just handed a plan. He made himself the absolute, undisputed driver of it, signaling to everyone inside and outside the country that this wasn't going to be reversed. But with that much power, how do you manage the domestic appetite for such incredibly fast, almost radical change?
And that is the key. That's where you find the defining characteristic of his whole approach. It's labeled as evolution, not revolution.
Evolution, not revolution. Okay, unpack that for us. What does that mean in practice?
It means you can't just flip a switch. If you try to introduce these massive social or economic changes too quickly, you risk completely unsettling the deeply conservative traditional fabric of Saudi society.
Could get a backlash.
A huge backlash.
Yeah.
So the sources really emphasize this. The transition has to be patient. It has to be gradual. It requires this continuous process of building consensus with the big religious authorities, with the major clan leaders. You need their support for it to be legitimate.
So it's like a constant, delicate diplomatic mission inside his own country.
It is.
He has to balance what the young people want, and something like 70% of Saudis are under 35?
That's right.
So he's balancing their desire for modernization with the absolute need to respect these very deep-seated cultural and religious traditions.
Exactly. And that need for balance brings us right to the three core pillars that hold up Vision 2030. These are the unique strategic advantages they're using to redefine themselves, to move beyond just being about oil.
Okay, pillar number one. This is probably the most fundamental part of their identity, the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds.
This is their unmatched source of moral and cultural leverage. Saudi Arabia is the custodian of Mecca and Medina, the two holiest sites on earth.
The direction of prayer, the Qibla for over 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide?
Right. And that status dictates everything. Their diplomacy, their humanitarian work, their internal social rules. And MBS is deeply, deeply aware of that religious gravity.
And that must be why, even as he's pushing for social liberalization, he's so careful about how he talks about religious reform.
Absolutely. Our sources point out he's been explicit about this. He said that if people misinterpret these reforms, it could, and I'm quoting here, make terrorists and extremists happy. They could claim he's changing the foundations of Islam.
Which he says he's not doing.
Right. The strategy is to move towards social openness that helps the economy, but do it in a way that doesn't compromise the kingdom's spiritual authority. It's a very careful strategic calculation.
Okay, let's move to the economic engine. Pillar 2. Global investment powerhouse. This must require a total restructuring of the country's finances.
It's a twofold plan. First, you take the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, and you turn it into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. That's the main vehicle for diversification.
And the second part?
The second part is transforming Saudi Aramco, taking it from just a state-owned oil producer into a global industrial giant with operations in refining, petrochemicals, logistics, you name it.
Let's stay on the PIF for a second. This isn't just about putting money in the bank. It's about aggressive, strategic plays.
Correct. And the PIF's growth has been just explosive. Its assets are already at $941.33 billion. They've actually blown past the $1 trillion goal they set for 2024. They hit it early.
So they have this war chest of nearly $1 trillion. Where's it all going?
It's going into cultivating completely new sectors at home: infrastructure, tech, tourism, sports. And it's going into acquiring strategic leverage globally. For instance, the PIF is a huge investor in U.S. public markets. They have major stakes in high-tech companies like Lucid Motors, and it's the PIF that's funding all those huge NEOM mega projects you hear about.
But is there any concern in the sources about concentrating that much power, almost $1 trillion, in a single state-controlled fund?
That's a really important point. And yes, while the sources all highlight how effective and strategic the PIF is, analysts do raise questions, mainly about governance, about transparency, especially given how centralized the decision-making is.
But the official line is?
The official narrative is that you need that centralized control to execute projects of this scale, at this speed, to hit that 2030 deadline.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Speed for transparency.
In a way, yes.
Okay, fascinating.
Right.
And the third pillar, global hub connecting 3 continents. This one is pure geography.
Pure geographical leverage, exactly. KSA sits at the absolute crossroads of Asia, Europe, and Africa. It's an unparalleled geostrategic location.
So they're positioned to be an indispensable hub for everything. Trade, logistics, digital data.
And they're capitalizing on it. They're building massive new ports, new rail networks, new logistics zones. The vision here fits perfectly with other global projects like China's Belt and Road Initiative. It positions Saudi Arabia not just as an oil tap for the world, but as a critical driver of international commerce itself.
Which brings us to the domestic side of things, the societal changes. Because you can't have a new economy without a new society to run it.
Precisely. This is probably the most visible, most talked about part of the whole vision. You can't run a high-tech economy if you don't have a social environment that attracts global talent.
And again, it's that evolution, not revolution idea. He's steering them toward what he calls a socially liberal society, but every single step is carefully negotiated within that very conservative framework.
And that's what Western observers often miss. They're measuring the changes against, a Western template of what reform should look like, instant radical change.
But that's not the context.
Not at all. They don't grasp the scale of the constant negotiation that's required to prevent society from fracturing. Our sources are clear. The goal is modernization without social discord.
So you made changes that improve quality of life, that boost the economy, but you do it while sticking to the fundamental principles of Sharia law.
Exactly.
So what are the most tangible examples? Where do we really see this evolution happening?
Without a doubt, the biggest changes have been in women's empowerment. And the data here is solid. This is not just window dressing.
Okay.
Female labor participation started at a baseline of 22.8% when Vision 2030 was announced. Today, it's at 34%.
That's an 11-point jump in less than a decade. I mean, in a traditional society, that is monumental. They're getting close to their 2030 goal of 40% already.
It is a massive structural change. And it's so much more than just letting women drive, which was obviously very symbolic.
Right.
It's about opening up entire professional sectors that were closed off before. It's investing in their education for high-demand jobs. It's creating legal frameworks that give women more autonomy in their professional lives.
And it's not just about rights, is it? It's an economic imperative.
It is. You can't diversify an economy if you're sidelining 50% of your working age population. It's just not possible.
And this goes hand in hand with the cultural opening,
Right.
the whole quality of life shift.
Exactly. This is for that young majority we talked about. The rapid introduction of high-level entertainment, opening cinemas for the first time in decades, massive music festivals, it's viewed inside the country as, well, one source said it's giving young people a life, freedom.
A life. Wow.
Yeah. It completely transforms the cultural landscape. And it aligns the social experience with global standards, which is, non-negotiable if you want to attract and keep highly skilled foreign professionals and stop your own young talent from leaving.
Let's make this more concrete with some of the mega projects. Because they're not just construction sites, are they? They're tools for this social shift.
Take a EULA. This isn't just about preserving some ancient archaeological sites. It's about turning an entire historical region into a global destination, a high-end cultural magnet.
So it's designed to attract a specific kind of tourist?
Okay.
And I guess challenge the idea that the Arabian Peninsula is just one monolithic desert.
That's a huge part of it, showcasing the deep, diverse history. And then you have the sheer ambition of something like Riyadh Boulevard City.
Right, the huge urban development.
That is the ultimate tool for stopping capital flight. Before these places existed, if you're an affluent Saudi, you'd go to Dubai or London or Paris for high-end shopping and entertainment.
And spend your money there.
Billions of dollars. Riyadh Boulevard City is this massive, purpose-built entertainment complex. It covers 900,000 square meters. It has theaters, world-class restaurants, shopping, even things like go-karting and seasonal skiing.
So the goal is simple. Keep that Saudi consumer spending inside Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. And the tourism strategy is just as aggressive. They're aiming for 30 million tourists a year.
Which means you need more than just destinations. You need world-class infrastructure to get them there.
And that's where you see things like the new luxury train, the dream of the desert. It's being positioned as the Middle East's first ultra-luxury rail journey, sort of an Orient Express for the desert.
So they're targeting the high-end premium experience market, not just budget tourism.
Right. Which, again, diversifies revenue and creates different kinds of jobs.
None of this can happen without stability and public support. How does the governance of Saudi Arabia actually work during all this upheaval?
It's fundamentally a tribal form of monarchy. It's rooted in custom and alliances. So for MBS to lead effectively, he needs to be in constant consultation, constant consensus building, not just with his ministers, but with those influential clan and regional leaders.
So he has to show them that these changes benefit everyone and respect the old hierarchies, even while he's modernizing.
Yes. And the sources are very clear on this. This isn't seen as something being imposed from the top down. It's seen as aligning with what people want.
The public support is real.
It's genuine. They see the Crown Prince as a visionary. His reforms are directly addressing their need for economic security, for a better future for their kids. When unemployment is dropping and new social opportunities are opening up, you get that public buy-in. And that's the foundation that lets you push through these huge economic pivots.
Okay, let's talk about that economic pivot. The core driver for all this is getting away from that oil vulnerability. And the period from, say, 2014 to 2020 was a pretty harsh lesson.
It was a brutal, unforgettable lesson, a stark reminder of just how fragile you are when you rely on one commodity, a commodity whose price is subject to these extreme, often political swings.
It led to huge budget deficits, right?
Massive fiscal deficits. It put a huge strain on the state's ability to fund everything. So the strategic mindset that came out of that was, oil is a tool, not a destiny.
And that mindset was on full display during the 2020 oil price crisis. Our sources call it the audacity anecdote. This wasn't just OPEC policy, was it? It was a high-stakes geopolitical game.
It was pure leverage.
Okay.
So March 2020, the pandemic is just starting to crush global demand. The oil market is already collapsing.
Okay.
Negotiations with Russia over cutting production break down. And MBS makes this extraordinary calculated decision. Instead of cutting production to try and prop up the price,
He decided to flood the market.
he flooded the market
That seems completely counterintuitive. Why make a crisis even worse?
to assert dominance, to force a solution on Saudi terms. This move was so aggressive it drove the price of oil into negative territory.
Meaning you had to pay someone to take the oil off your hands.
Literally. Because there was nowhere left to store it. And this crisis was so severe, it started to destabilize major American oil companies, the entire global economy.
And what was the end result of that?
It cornered President Trump. He's facing an election. He saw the catastrophic impact on the U.S. energy sector, and he was forced to step in. He had to personally pressure KSA and Russia to cooperate and stabilize the prices.
So the anecdote shows that MBS was willing to use oil not just for profit, but as a strategic weapon.
To assert leverage against the biggest global players, to make sure that Saudi Arabia's interests, not someone else's, would dictate their policy from then on. It was a declaration of autonomy.
And that autonomy is the engine behind the core diversification strategy. What are the actual measurable goals there?
The main goal is incredibly ambitious, to take non-oil exports from 16% of GDP to 50%.
16 to 50. That means building entire new industries. Mining, logistics, manufacturing, high-tech. From scratch.
All from the ground up, requiring massive, sustained investment.
But to build those industries, you have to solve that huge demographic problem. The population has exploded from 4 million in the 60s to 36 million today. You have this massive growing number of young people who need jobs.
And the main tool for that is Saudization, or the Nidicot system. This is a critical national policy.
For listeners who don't know, how does Nidicot actually work?
Nidicot means ranges or categories. It's a system that categorizes private companies based on the percentage of Saudi nationals they employ.
Right.
Companies get color codes. Platinum and green are the top tiers. If you're in those, you get big government incentives, faster visa processing, better access to state contracts.
And if you're not?
If you're in the yellow or red categories, you get penalized. Restrictions on hiring foreign workers, less access to government services.
So it's a very direct, color-coded stick-and-carrot approach. It's designed to force the private sector to hire Saudis over cheaper expat labor.
Exactly. It's an interventionist policy, no doubt, but it seems to be working.
The numbers back that up.
They do. National unemployment fell from a baseline of 12.3% down to 7.7% in 2023. That's way ahead of their targets. And that drop is vital for keeping social stability and public support for the whole vision.
Beyond forcing companies to hire, there's this huge push into soft power and high tech, this pursuit of excellence.
Yeah.
And the most obvious example is sports.
Right. And these aren't just vanity projects. The huge investments Livy Golf, getting the 2034 FIFA World Cup, buying football stars like Ronaldo and Neymar for their domestic league, it's all deeply strategic.
What's the strategy? What are the goals?
It's about three things. First, amplify KSA's global profile. Second, build national pride, especially for the youth. And third, generate real economic spillover. Tourism, media rights, all of it.
How does buying a famous footballer lead to economic spillover?
Well, think about the visibility. The Saudi Pro League is now watched all over the world. That brings in massive international broadcast revenue, it boosts stadium attendance, and it creates this virtuous cycle.
So you raise the quality and reputation of your whole football system just in time to host the World Cup. It's a way of showing the world you can execute at a high level.
Exactly. But this pursuit of excellence goes way beyond sports. The most critical pivot is into the industries that will shape the future. And that means the AI mega push.
Right.
Saudi Arabia figured out early on that oil is the commodity of the 20th century, but data and AI, that's the 21st century. So the PIF is reportedly planning a massive $40 billion investment push into artificial intelligence.
$40 billion. That's more than the entire defense budget of many major countries. What does that money buy you?
It buys you the critical infrastructure, huge data centers, high-performance computing clusters, and it buys you crucial partnerships. They're already making alliances with tech giants.
Like who?
Oracle, for example, has signed on to build large cloud computing regions in the kingdom. Companies like Pure Storage are working with Riyadh to develop advanced digital services. It's a clear, high-stakes bet on becoming a technologically sophisticated, forward-looking state, using their capital now for relevance later.
And that economic pivot is completely tied up with a huge geopolitical reorientation. This is Saudi Arabia actively, as you say, rejecting subservience to its traditional Western partners.
It's not a subtle shift. It's a very direct assertion of autonomy. MBS's leadership reflects this determination to reject what they see as a patronizing undertone from partners like the U.S.
A transactional relationship.
Right. They're asserting their right to make choices that align only with their own national interests in what is clearly becoming a multipolar world.
The classic example of this was the refusal to increase oil production when President Biden asked in 2022 after the invasion of Ukraine.
Precisely. That decision showed the world that KSA would prioritize the stability of the OPEC Plus agreement and its own long-term economic strategy over the short-term political needs of any single ally.
So it was a signal. The relationship with Washington continues, but it's not a hierarchical one anymore.
Not a subordinate one now. And this new autonomy is what's driving their shift in partnerships. Most notably, the alignment with China in joining BRICS.
That move toward China is purely pragmatic.
Purely. China offers huge investment, which they need for the Vision 2030 projects. And crucially, China offers this without any political interference in their internal affairs.
Which is a sharp contrast to the pressure on human rights or ideology that they sometimes feel from the West.
Exactly. And then joining BRICS, which happened on January 1st, 2024, that just solidifies the whole move.
It's a geopolitical marker.
A decisive one. It puts KSA at the table with the other major emerging powers, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It cements their commitment to this new multipolar world order where non-Western economic power is the goal.
Let's talk about maybe the most profound long-term strategic pivot of all, the one with huge security implications, the quiet revolution of civil nuclear power.
This is an absolute domestic necessity for them. Right now, KSA uses hydrocarbon fuels for 99.4% of its electricity.
Which is incredibly inefficient. And it's burning oil that they could be selling for revenue.
Right. Nuclear energy is really seen as the only viable, large-scale, carbon-free alternative to meet their soaring energy demand, which is driven by population growth and, the need for air conditioning.
So it's about energy diversification, decarbonization.
Yeah.
And I imagine water.
Absolutely. Nuclear power is also the best solution for the massive amount of energy you need for carbon-free water desalination, a critical resource there. But the strategic implications of getting this technology are immense, particularly the geopolitical leverage.
And that leverage comes from the potential for domestic uranium enrichment. In the Middle East, what does that really mean?
It means a lot. KSA has an explicit ambition to get the expertise and the facilities to enrich its own uranium. Now, officially, they maintain this is only for civil purposes, to fuel their future reactors.
But no one in the region would see it that way.
No. It would be universally seen, regionally and internationally, as a form of latent nuclear deterrence.
Latent deterrence, meaning they would have the capacity to produce weapons-grade material even if they never actually do it.
Correct. In a region where Iran is actively enriching uranium and the threat level is extremely high, having this capability positions KSA as a serious global security and tech player. It means they're not dependent on anyone else for their critical energy, and it gives them security against regional rivals.
And if this energy pivot succeeds, there's a potentially massive systemic consequence for the entire global financial system. The petrodollar implication.
This is the high-stakes outcome. We should probably define the petrodollar system first.
Please.
Since the 1970s, by agreement with the U.S., Saudi Arabia has sold its oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. This forces every country that buys oil to hold huge dollar reserves. It gives the U.S. immense financial and geopolitical power.
So if KSA backs away from that agreement, the consequences are staggering.
Potentially, yes. If Saudi Arabia successfully brings nuclear power online, reducing its own need for oil, and at the same time starts offering flexible payment terms for its energy.
Like selling oil or gas or hydrogen and other currencies, like the Chinese yuan.
Exactly, or the Indian rupee. If they do that, it could accelerate a global move away from the petrodollar system, and that would significantly destabilize the foundations of global finance. It would signal a true shift in the balance of global economic power.
Shifting gears a bit, let's look at how Saudi Arabia is deliberately trying to shape its image as a peace builder, a humanitarian power. This seems deeply connected to its identity as the heart of the Islamic world.
It is. The core message of Islam is peace. And this image they're projecting has real theological substance behind it.
How so?
Well, the Quran's core message is about tolerance, altruism, the sanctity of life. The contrast is really sharp. The word peace and its related terms appear 136 times, the word war only 6 times. And the principle of zakat, or obligatory charity, is central to Saudi governance.
For our listeners, what exactly is zakat in this context?
Zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's basically a mandatory annual tax, usually 2.5% of your wealth, that gets distributed to the needy. Because that's so deeply embedded in their social and religious structure, large-scale charity isn't just optional soft power. It's seen as a central moral mandate for the state.
And that moral mandate has been turned into a very active global humanitarian apparatus.
That would be the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center, or Case Relief. And this organization is a global powerhouse. They've run over 2,000 projects in 84 different countries. Everything from emergency food and medicine to long-term specialized programs.
What kind of specialized programs?
A key one is a massive demining program in Yemen called MESAM. It's about clearing unexploded bombs to protect civilians. They also run very sophisticated programs to rehabilitate and reintegrate former child soldiers.
The scale of the aid is huge.
The volume is staggering. KSA has given out nearly $95 billion in aid to 174 countries over the last 25 years. This consistent soft power projection really emphasizes their commitment to civilians, even in conflicts where they might have other strategic interests.
And that humanitarian work gives them credibility when they try to assert themselves as a diplomatic force for peace. They're moving from being just a consumer of security to an active architect of it.
They absolutely are. And the most significant proof of that shift was the agreement they mediated with Iran in March 2023, with China's help.
A huge deal.
Huge. This rapprochement, which was really driven by pragmatism on both sides to de-escalate these decades of proxy wars, showed that Riyadh could initiate major strategic shifts in the Middle East.
And their credibility as a neutral player has gone beyond the region now, right, with the talks on the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Correct. They hosted multi-party talks on the conflict in Jeddah in August 2023. And that was a crucial move. It asserted their ambition to become a pivotal global convener.
And they got about 30 nations to show up, right? Or a lot from the global south.
Right. Even though Moscow wasn't there, it showed that Saudi Arabia is building this reputation as a credible, non-aligned facilitator. They're using their financial and spiritual capital to make themselves indispensable on the world's diplomatic stage.
But the geopolitical situation is always changing, and the pace seems to be accelerating. It's constantly testing KSA's vision. The most immediate crisis, of course, was the October 7th, 2023 attack and the war in Gaza.
That conflict immediately threw the region's volatility into sharp relief, and it showed the limits of KSA's diplomatic flexibility at that moment.
Because they had been in these complex normalization talks with Israel, a major strategic move.
A huge move, aligned with their global hub strategy. But they suspended those talks immediately after the attacks.
Why the immediate suspension?
It showed that for all the modernization and new alliances, the Palestinian cause is still a decisive, sensitive factor. KSA cannot risk its moral standing as the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds by looking like it's sidelining the Palestinians during a major humanitarian crisis.
So they used the suspension of talks as leverage to emphasize that any regional stability has to include a real solution for the Palestinians.
Exactly. Now, our sources lay out a scenario for another, truly seismic geopolitical shift in the region. This one focuses on the potential weakening of Iranian influence in Syria.
And we need to be very clear here. This is an analytical scenario. It's based on current trends and intelligence insights, not established fact.
Absolutely. The scenario suggests that if current trends continue, especially with Tehran's ongoing economic problems and the growing regional coordination against Iran's proxies, that Bashar al-Assad's regime could face a sudden coordinated pressure campaign, one that could lead to its collapse maybe as early as late 2024.
Which would mean the dismantling of Iran's strategic Shia crescent, that axis from Iran through Iraq and Syria all the way to Lebanon.
Correct. It would be a massive geopolitical realignment. And the sources indicate that if it happened, it would likely be the result of a highly coordinated regional effort. The intelligence points to a convergence of interests between several actors who all want to dismantle that Iranian axis.
Who are the key players in this hypothetical effort?
The analysis points to several. Turkey, which wants to dismantle Kurdish influence in northern Syria. KSA and Qatar, providing financial and military aid to opposition groups like HTS,
Which we should note was previously a designated terrorist organization, but has pivoted to a more civilian governance role.
a crucial point. And then, critically, the sources cite Jordan and potentially even Israel as providing vital intelligence on Syrian military communications. It reflects this unprecedented, fragile alignment of interests, all aimed at regional stability.
So if this coordinated effort were to happen, it would create a new reality in Syria, significantly weaken Iran, and really accelerate KSA's own drive for regional dominance.
And that shift could rapidly put Riyadh at the very center of global diplomacy. Our sources detail scenarios in early 2025 that really illustrate this rising influence.
For example, a scenario where Riyadh hosts emissaries to negotiate solutions to the war in Ukraine, putting KSA at the heart of global decision-making.
Yes, the sheer significance of Riyadh hosting American and Russian emissaries, maybe to prepare for a major summit between world leaders, it just underscores the successful transition from a regional oil supplier to an indispensable global political convener.
It puts them at the center of resolving major global crises, a clear sign of MBS's rising personal and strategic influence.
And that personal influence isn't just symbolic, it's translating into actual policy outcomes.
So,
The sources mention that one of the clearest signs came when a major U.S. leader, during a visit to Riyadh, publicly said that he had lifted sanctions on Syria after being personally persuaded by MBS to do it.
wow.
It highlights the Crown Prince's decisive, persuasive role in shaping this new regional order, giving Syria, as he put it, a chance at greatness after so much conflict.
So you have this convergence. KSA's sustained diplomacy, its massive internal economic diversification, and this potential geopolitical vacuum. It all adds up to Saudi Arabia cementing its position as an indispensable, truly autonomous major power.
What we've really seen today is the story of a nation undergoing this total aggressive transformation. It's guided by an unwavering strategic vision. MBS is balancing these deep traditions with a very patient but radical modernization. All of it underpinned by this clear vision for a prosperous, diversified, influential future.
We've spent this whole deep dive charting their path away from being defined just by oil. They're leveraging their immense capital, their unique strategic position, their spiritual status, all of it to influence global outcomes, not just regional ones.
And the consistency of the execution, those 87% completion rates, the 81% of KPIs being met, it shows that they are operating on a long-term, patient timeline. They're willing to take short-term pain, like flooding the oil market in 2020, to get massive long-term geopolitical and economic leverage.
And this commitment to a long-term strategy and to maintaining relationships that serve their interests despite past problems. That seems to be a central theme.
It is. And that whole strategic philosophy is maybe best captured in a piece of wisdom MBS is said to embody, an old Arabic proverb.
What's that?
Write the bad things that have been done to you in the sand, but engrave the good things in marble.
That's a profound principle for diplomacy and for life. So, if KSA's approach forgiving historical slights while meticulously building on successes with new alliances, if that's applied consistently across the volatile Middle East, does that philosophy hold the key to finally unlocking sustainable peace and prosperity in the region?
It suggests that for the builder, history's burdens are acknowledged, you learn from them, but you never let them permanently stop you from building the vision. The future for them isn't dictated by the past.
Something for you to consider long after this deep dive ends. Thank you for listening.